Hey you guys, welcome to another episode of Shred Your Halo. I'm Edel and this is my best friend Jharna, and we've come to you again with this fortnight's episode of a very important topic, not very glamorous, and it will take a very dark turn. Be advised, get yourself a glass of wine because you're going to need it. We're going to talk about relationship Stockholm Syndromes, and this was suggested by her. She is responsible, not me. I'm the good one. Take it away.
The reason I came up with this topic was because I was reading the book you had suggested to me, Men Who Hate Women and the Women Who Love Them. And it talks about women who are in extremely abusive, misogynistic relationships with men and how they don't find it in them to leave the relationship. And it got me thinking because we see a lot of misogynists, whether you're a man, you're a woman, or whatever gender that you belong to. We see that kind of attack happen on women quite a lot. At least that has been my experience. Over a period of basically all my life. So I just felt that it was a very, very relevant topic to talk about, not just in terms of going back to a bad romantic relationship, but even a bad friendship, or even a relationship with your parents if you have a toxic family relationship with them. So I felt it would be a good topic to explore and basically have fun with it.
Oh, so much fun.
So why do you think we go back to such relationships?
Because it's familiar to us, right? You eat what you eat because that's what you're familiar with. It doesn't matter whether it's nutritious or it's right for you. You eat what you eat. You say the things that you say. You do the things that you do. And that's where adulthood comes in and should play a part. But unfortunately, in the culture that we do live in, we tend to get girls married off very early without having them explore the world in their own terms. And we've also created a society where they are shamed so badly for wanting to stand on their own 2 feet. So therefore, the majority of the population falls under the imprisonment of conformity. And therefore, there is not much exploration of what could be, what is possible, where you just have the Stockholm Syndrome of celebrating what is. And that goes under the guise of culture, tradition, and then you perpetuate it to the next generation. And just because it went unchallenged in a previous generation and a previous generation and a previous generation, you just think, oh, this is a mighty giant. Never mind it's a giant paper tiger. You just think it's this insurmountable enemy that I'd rather just succumb to it because it's tradition, because it's culture, because this is what is done. This is what a good person does. And then we go ahead and keep doing it. And what else do you call it except Stockholm Syndrome? Because it's familiar, right?
Yeah.
We befriend that which is familiar. We try to adapt ourselves to that which is familiar. We don't challenge what is familiar because then we'll have to step into the unknown, and the unknown is always dangerous. Survival depends on the known, not on the unknown. So we are intrinsically designed to stick to what we know, even the evil that we know, rather than the good that we don't know, that is possible for us. And therefore, we stay where we are. And it's very sad and unfortunate. And when you were talking about misogyny, misogyny doesn't necessarily have to feel like misogyny, right? Misogyny can come in the guise of, I care about you. Don't wear that top. You know, I care about you. I'm so jealous if another man looks at you. Or I care about you. I want you to do well in life, but not too well.
Yeah.
You know, just well enough, but below me. I want you to be dependent on me. Misogyny can come in the guise of, I love that you're so witty and wonderful, but oh my God, lest you get an attention from a person that I consider a threat to me, you know. So misogyny can come in the guise of protection, can come in the guise of love.
Yeah.
And that's why it
and
stays.
I guess when we say love, it's what we are familiar with, not what love actually feels like. And to be honest, I don't know what love feels like when it comes to other people, and I'm just beginning to understand what it could possibly mean for me, and it requires work. And also, familiar is one thing that, you know, you're used to it and that's why you stay, but it's also because you didn't have any other way to deal with it when you were a child. It's what you had to adopt because you had to survive. And sometimes we make a resolve that we will never do this with our kids, we will never do this to other people who are close to us, the people that we care about, because we went through something like that. But because it's something that you have just inherently adopted into your life, it's just almost become muscle memory for you, you invariably end up treating other people the way you would treat it, because you will treat other people the way you feel about yourself. So for me, I mean, I basically second everything that Edel said in terms of why we go back to abusive relationships. I honestly don't really have anything more to add to it. You've pretty much covered that.
And this is the problem with see, what worked for our survival as children will not work into our adulthood, because the universe is about expansion and it's not about constriction, right? And when you had to break off and amputate pieces of yourself in order to conform to a certain reality that ensured that you stay alive at childhood, that will not work in adulthood. And this could possibly be the reason for the number of mental disorders that we see, the amount of suicides we come across, so tragic, you know, and the lifestyle diseases that I come across in my practice. What happens? Let's just say this radical idea of taking away the cloak of that which we were covered under, right? Walking away from underneath the umbrella of the shade that we're used to. What is the worst that can happen to us? Like you just now said, like you don't know what love actually means, but what you're beginning to understand is that it requires commitment and work.
Yeah.
What if we started defining that? And I'm not talking about pet peeves and preferences, right? That's the surface level. But I'm talking intrinsically about what we gravitate towards. Not what my favorite color is, what my favorite magazine quiz is, and who I am in the Sex and City characters. That's not what I'm talking about. But I'm talking about intrinsically, who am I? Have we answered that question as a person? You know, why are we so afraid of being, yes.
I think it's also the fact that I don't know the percentage wise, but I think most people who are adults, at some point in their lives, they've been told by an authority figure or a caretaker that in some way or the other, if they haven't been healthy adults themselves, in some way they find a way to make it seem like the child is at fault. And also,
yes, I was done. Yeah, that was done.
And also that starts to give you the idea that you are not good enough, because when you are a really small child, you have your family taking care of you and they cheer you on and they encourage you when you do good things. So you tend to believe that. You start saying, yes, so I am like this, I'm like that, because they're saying such good things about me. And in the same vein, when they say you are bad because you have done something like that, there is no filter for the child to understand whether they're good or they're bad, and the bad sticks with you more than the good does. So no matter what the parent says or the authority figure says or your caretaker, your primary caretaker says, you will believe everything without a filter. So it's, I think, and we have that internal parent that keeps a check and keeps us in line and says things to us, does things to us that maybe even if the parent has gone away from the picture, we still keep doing it to us over and over and over again. So yeah, so even if you have technically left an abusive relationship in terms of physical presence, you still have that abusive relationship going on inside of you, playing on a loop. So I think that is something we need to find a way to step away from.
So what we have in a classic Stockholm Syndrome is a kidnapper, a victim, and a dynamic and a rule system that is operating within, in secret, within an acceptable norm
And
outside.
that serves the kidnapper.
Yes, obviously.
Yeah.
So you have a kidnapper, which is usually the primary caretaker, which in majority of the cases happens to be a parent. Parents, or if you're lucky enough to have two parents. The kidnappee is the child who depends on the parents for everything. So even if you are born with different set of ideals and rules, which you will be, which is the reason why you are born, because the universe needs to expand through you, we learn to adapt and accept and nod our heads to what the previous generation says in order to survive, because well, it's nice to be pleasant, it's nice to be pleasing, it's nice to be accepting, and therefore when they do not have any resistance up until the age of puberty, parents thrust their resolve, are not trying to find out what your point of view is, and they become a sort of a tyrant where I'm so used to the adulation from this child whom I have mesmerized into accepting everything I say. And then you grow up, and then God forbid if you go through a rebellious phase and you rebel, and then you feel the wrath of 1,000 Thors, rain down on your head, and you buckle under the pressure, and you go down into, the rabbit hole of, let me just be agreeable to survive. And then you come into adulthood, and you've now perfected a series of manipulative techniques to get on in the world. You don't have negotiation skills. You don't have, I agree to disagree with you. This is my point of view. Let's just get along and see how far we can go with having different points of view.
But this is also something I've seen more in the case of women, because we're not taught negotiation skills. But with men, it's
Agreeable.
different, right? If they get aggressive, you're okay to go out, play sports. You're allowed to participate in activities that lets you express your aggression. But that's not the case for most girls that I see, because it's not womanly or feminine to be aggressive. So that is also a huge factor that plays in I think just going back to relationships that are not great for us.
So we just land up with agreeing with a set of principles and rules, and then we can see the result of the agreeing, which is I continue to survive. Oh, so then what I'm doing is right, but everything in me feels
Like
crushed,
screaming,
crushed and horrible. I'm with this person who says he loves me, but then he's choosing to look at other women and say that, oh, she's beautiful. And then, oh, but I have to be so happy with the fact that he comes home with me.
and also makes plans for the future where
You're
not even a part of it, but you just somehow sort of feel like, oh, okay, I have to imagine that this is what he's thinking.
Yeah. And then you become a second-class citizen in your own existence. This is not fucking acceptable anymore.
Yeah.
And when it's not acceptable anymore, guess what?
You will have people dropping out of your life like flies.
You should be prepared. Like, if your entire life is filled with emotional kidnappers And the only reason your relationships were sailing as smoothly as they were, if I could say those words, is because you agreed to be the kidnappee and play by their rules. And now suddenly you want to like establish boundaries, like excuse me. Stockholm Syndrome is actually works for you if you do not want to shake up the status quo, right?
Because once you start challenging that, the amount of resistance that you will experience,
there's a whole different culture you're going to have to learn and adopt. And you're going to have to look at your parents as people instead of parents, right? You're going to have to look at your ex relationships as extension of your parent wounds rather than people you were in love with, right? And you're going to have to look at patterns instead of what you would prefer to look at. And then suddenly you find yourself into this open space of possibilities where you are no longer, because you know yourself so well now, that you don't want to perpetuate a pattern that you don't want to pass on to the next generation. So what are you going to do? You're going to put an end to it, right? And if putting an end to something that you have just in autopilot been doing for the rest for the whole of your life, now it's living in consciousness. The only difference between living in Stockholm Syndrome is survival is your primary focus. So you define love by surviving love. You will attract partners whom you'll have to keep with you.
You'll have
Keeping them in the relationship will take up all your energy.
Probably indulge in behavior where they'll possibly be dependent on you, so they can't leave you.
Yes. And then you will be helping them with their work. You will be helping them with their job profile, and they will be, you'll find relationships where codependently you will want to make their problems into the relationship problems, and you want to work with it so that you have value in the relationship. But at the end of your days, really, if people are our goals, we've lived an extremely poor life. People should be the byproduct of our goals. Our goal should be a reflection of who we are. And if we are living in this prison of survival, we will never know who we are. It is so scary. It is so scary to break out from that prison of culture, of tradition, of what you know, of pleasing somebody in order for their approval to be the license for us to be alive, right? If I got out of that cage and I'm like, I'm alive, bitch, and then you go about and you just do the things that keep you alive, you're like, okay, where is the approval that means that I'm alive? It's not going to be there. There's going to be no more approval.
And with some relationships, the thing is also, another thing is, when people keep going back to abusive relationships, it's because they're hoping that they'll keep doing the same thing over and over again, but you'll expect a different result. That doesn't happen. That's called
insanity.
It's like doing different things, doing the same things but expecting different results is insanity. That's what Einstein said, right?
I don't know who said it, but yes, that is an incredible.
So when you expect that sort of result to happen, it won't. And when you do break away from an abusive relationship that has been familiar, give yourself time to grieve that relationship as well, because it kept you alive, it kept you safe for how many ever years you didn't see that was happening to you. It is normal to feel like a part of you has been severed, and it's okay to feel sad, it's okay to grieve the hurt, the anger, it's okay to let yourself experience all of that. But you also have to find a way to step away if you're looking for a different life. You need to do different things to expect different results. You can't keep doing the same thing over and over again.
man. Easier said than done. My
I know.
God, easier said
I
than
know.
done. Yes.
And also, I think like what helped you say that, okay, I'm done with this.
I saw how my dad died. He had diabetes, he had hypertension, he had cholesterol, he had brain disorders, he had Parkinson's, and then I thought, oh my God, if I did everything he taught me to do, I'm going to die exactly the way he died, because half of my flesh is him. And that was a terrifying, terrifying wake-up call, number one. Number two, I just didn't like where I was. I couldn't let fragile things break, right? All my energy was, my entire life was walking on eggshells. My entire life was walking on eggshells for people. And I am here ballet dancing and twisting myself into this impossible pretzel. And they're like, oh, would you want to have a cracker with your coffee? And I'm like, fuck you, bitch. I am like working so hard. And nobody saw it, And it reached a point where my energy was scattered all over just to stay afloat. And that was no longer acceptable for me. I suddenly wanted to get ahead. So I dumped the deadbeat boyfriend that I had. A lot of my friends dropped off, which I had to, unfortunately. No, not unfortunately. Unfortunately for them. Sucks to be you. I'm so sorry. A lot of my friends had to leave, but I'm so glad because I was carrying their dead weight while I was balancing on eggshells. Like who does that? That's not normal. And also confronting death. Very really knowing that death lives at the end of my life. That is an absolute inevitability. And we're all going to die. And in the end, what do I care how many people cry at my funeral? Fuck you for crying at a place where I can't hear you. This is an incredible blank slate ahead of me. And suddenly I'm not afraid of pissing people off. Suddenly I'm not afraid of being a failure. Suddenly, for whatever reason, I am so voraciously ambitious that it just no kidnapper can handle this kidnapping. And I'm no longer bothered. I'm willing to, it's just reached this point of like, this is the final wall against which my back can stand. Now the only way is forward. Like I've hit so many rock bottoms that I kept thinking rock bottoms was the rule of my life. That, and then finally this rock bottom and there's no more trapdoor and I'm not falling anywhere down. Then I think, oh, okay, now it's time to swim up. And you know what? It's a lonely journey sometimes. And sometimes you get quality friends. And sometimes you get quality solitary time. The very things that I was scared about. And it's okay. For me, it just became okay to be me. That was the end of my Stockholm Syndrome spree. What about you?
The first thing that I did to stop or at least break that pattern to some extent, I'm still dealing with a lot of other stuff in sense of understanding, because every day is like a new thing, right? But the first thing that I did was I decided that I was going to choose myself over everybody else.
Whoa.
And when that happened, I felt like I was cheating on everybody that I knew with myself. There was a lot of guilt attached to that. A lot of, oh my God, how can I do this to someone else? When I
Not
was
someone else, Jharna, everybody else.
Yeah. So when I decided to choose myself, I got out of a relationship that I was not happy in.
Toxic. I'm going to say the word. Like nuclear toxic. Okay, radioactive toxic. Okay, go ahead.
And a lot of people dropped out of my life. I can literally count the number of friends I have on one palm. And I know it sounds very sad when people say I have very less friends.
No, it's not.
But I am so glad, because these are all the only people I can give my time to in my life. And then I started paying a little bit more attention to my career, to my job, which I realized I had neglected for a very long time. And it is important to not let your job define you, but it is important to have something to look forward to that you can wake up to every morning. Otherwise, it is
Like, preach!
otherwise, what's the point, right?
There was a lot of female screeching out there.
It didn't stop recording, so good.
Yay!
So that was something that I decided to do, and I decided to take up certain hobbies that I had just stopped doing, because all my time went in trying to make people happy. Oh, you don't like this about me? That's okay. I'm going to
Amputate that.
or fit myself into a box that feels good for you. And also it helped very much to move away from what my familiar surroundings were, where I had the opportunity to explore who I was. So I moved away from home and I started living by myself, and I don't know how many of us have the luxury of doing that. But I was lucky enough to be there, where I could choose to live away from home, and I found myself in a way I don't think I could have done that if I had been in familiar surroundings. So that was very helpful. And therapy. We advocate therapy literally all the time, and therapy works like magic.
Oh, Jesus.
That
You hate it? Therapy
Yeah.
you have to hate therapy. You have to cry in therapy. Therapy should not feel you like, oh, this feels like a mother's womb. It shouldn't feel like that. It should feel like, why am I being taken to the stake all the time? Why am I feeling so attacked? Why am I having so much homework?
Yeah.
That is what therapy is supposed to feel like.
And therapy, when you're doing it, feels like shit.
Aye,
If you are
aye.
doing it
Yeah,
right,
yeah, yeah.
it does not feel good, because it makes you question the most uncomfortable parts of you. But those are familiar parts. And the minute you start feeling uncomfortable, you realize there's a trigger there that you have to address. Otherwise, you're just going to keep repeating that pattern and keep going back to relationships that just feel like crap, and it's not worth it. So for me, choosing myself was the first thing that I did, because I just decided I've had enough with this bullshit and I don't want to live like this anymore. Plus, also, you had been doing a lot of internal work for a year before, I think a year or 2 years before.
14, I started. So that was 14, 15, 16, 17.
3 years. 3
Yeah.
years, yeah. 3 years before I decided to do this. So I'd already seen Edel do things that she was not very comfortable doing, and she was still standing. So how
Barely.
But
Most of the time,
that's the thing,
barely.
right? When we're doing stuff like that, we don't. I think the minute you start doing a lot of internal work, you realize that you are responsible for all of the choices that you make in your life.
Yes.
And even if you are barely standing, you are at a place where you have gained some amount of awareness, where you don't
Absolutely.
want to put that pressure on another person to feel exactly where you are in your journey.
Yes.
So for me, it felt like, okay, she's still standing here and she still seems okay, so how bad can it be for me? And then I realized it wasn't very nice. But I will not change
No.
anything that I have done in the last 3 years, because I am so much more happy where I am right now, even if I'm in the dump.
Aren't you
And-
happy in your dump?
Oh, so happy.
Is it a happy dump?
It is.
It's better to
It's
be in
my
your
sewage, and I am going to deal with it. I'm not going to deal with your
It's my
sewage.
garbage. Don't criticize my garbage.
So even when there are times when I feel completely shitty about myself, I know I'm responsible for what I'm feeling and I know how to change that. So the power at the end of the day comes back to you when you decide that you are going to do your internal work, and when you have gained enough self-awareness, there will be a bit, like, I think there's also a sort of a bridge, right, from the point where you have literally no awareness to gaining some amount of awareness. That
Yes.
bridge, there will be times you will feel like screaming at other people about what you're going through. Very normal to do that.
Yes.
But you will get to a point where you don't feel the need to do that because you are consistently working on getting your own approval, which will keep you from going back to people who will give you approval only based on what you can do for them. So that was a huge thing. Therapy helped. Like, I'm so thankful for therapy. And of course, doing internal work.
Yes.
Teal Swan, my good God. Like, she's the lessons that she puts out on her YouTube videos help so much. So I was able to use a lot of those techniques, and her insight into how the human condition is, that helped me a lot. Doing the work of Byron Katie helped a lot. So, and Vipassana.
Oh yes.
Vipassana is very, very powerful, and Vipassana is accessible in more than 150 countries all over the world, and the same technique is followed no matter
Everywhere.
where you go. So if that is something that you would like to consider, please do it. And also, Vipassana works on a donation basis. It's not something you pay for. So that could also propel you, because a lot of times we feel that financial restrictions are there in place. How do I go to retreat? Vipassana is an option you can consider, but be prepared that it's not going to be easy, but it's definitely worth it.
Good things seldom are.
Yeah.
You know, good things seldom are. Like, for instance, when I was in England, I went to buy this car, right? And I walked into this BMW showroom, and there was nobody there to show me the cars. They were like, our engineering speaks for itself. So I was just stood there, can't somebody show me a nice color car? I'm just perpetuating a stereotype. And then I went to a Mercedes showroom, and then there was like nobody was there to show me anything. And then I was like, okay, there's no human touch here. I have to go to a Ford showroom. And then I got people descended on me like flies. And I loved it, and I got my Ford Focus. So, you know what it is? Like, when you know your quality, when you know who you are, and you don't derive your sense of worth from who you surround yourself with, but what you do and who you are, in silence and in quiet and in inactivity, in unproductivity. If you know who you are, without the things you produce, without the things you churn out, without the things other people describe you as through adjectives, when you reach that sense of power, you are going to be a fucking dangerous animal. And dangerous animal not because you bare your canines and your, you know, like, the rubbish and the flotsam of the world will not come near you. And enough that you have the worst people tread all over the landscape of our hearts to make, oh my God, I just look like I've had so many. You know how a football field looks like after the cleats? I just pictured the surface of my heart looking like that when I did one of my meditations. And it just looked like all this earth just churned out, you know? And I said, oh, I don't like this picture. Please show me another picture of what you look like. And my subconscious came up with another picture of a golf course with chunks of the turf. Chunks of the turf scooped out very neatly, but still scooped out. And I'm like, this hurts.
Yeah.
You know, enough of becoming lesser in order to keep the status quo. Just because you can keep the sense of order, so that why? I'm sorry, we live in a world where tsunamis were possible, where forest fires are possible, where pandemics are possible now. Anything is possible. So guess what? Take stock of our life. Let's take control of our lives. Let's take the reign away from people who have defined our very existence and say, no, that's not who I am. That's not who I am. Your best intentions for me is not who I am. Maybe I am just the person who sits in front of the TV and eats popcorn and watches shows after shows. Maybe that's who I am. Maybe I'm the person that says, wedding ring doesn't fit me so well. I'm going to go to the job. And I just want to have a job. I don't want to have a child. Maybe that's who you are. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the world says you are and what deep down inside who you feel you are. Both of them can exist. The world can speak and you can still speak your truth, and we can still coexist in non-conformity. Stockholm Syndrome comes only when we feel this deep need to conform with the majority. And it's okay to be odd.
Yeah. And I think it also helps when you surround yourself with people who treat you well, so you can see a contrast between being treated well and being treated poorly. So that is another way to, of course, that also happens with therapy and internal work. So the minute you change your insides, your outsides will automatically change.
Yes.
So, yeah.
So we're here just to remind you that you're worth it. You're worth the struggle to come into the other side, to give birth to yourself, to find that, oh, wow, you're worth it. Die for yourself so you can give birth to who you are. And I hope that you found this video informative as well as encouraging. And please subscribe and share. Why are you laughing? Why? This is encouraging, Jharna.
It's just that we say such like dark stuff, and then we're like,
but shadows are whatever. You know, the things that we keep hidden are in the dark.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But that's where the biggest treasures are found. Right? Our secrets are our treasures. So go seeking after your treasures. Be unapologetically who you are. And the people that depended on you lying to yourself and being a fake version of yourself in order to keep a relationship alive were never part of your equation to begin with. And let them die. Let fragile things break. Your life should be filled with solidity, and you've come over here to create a life based on your terms. And that's what the world wants. That's what the universe wants. God, whichever God that you worship.
Yeah, whatever you consider God.
Yes, or source consciousness. You know, this is what we all came here for, and let's unapologetically be part of the mission to be who we are. Right? So, I hope you like this video. Please share it to whoever you think requires a little bit of a kick in the pants, a loving hug,
whatever you want to make
a bit of a
this
boost. Yes. A person whom you think needs to break off with that deadbeat boyfriend before they choose themselves. Send this video. Yes, because we've done it. And we know what deadbeat boyfriends feel like. Oh. No, not to put all men down, but just deadbeat boyfriends. Anyway, so do this for yourself. Do this for you. You matter. You are the most important thing in your world. And if you're not, why are you not? What are you doing to keep yourself in second place from yourself? So I hope you ask yourself these questions and find answers that satisfy you, hopefully. And if they don't, I hope this video gives you answers as to what tools you can use to find the doorways that will open to give you the freedom that you so desperately are seeking. So please click like and subscribe to our videos. We put out one new video every fortnight, and because we know you can't handle us every week.
I don't know if we can handle ourselves every week.
Right. So we love you very much, and we will catch up with you. The wine's gotten to me. Catch up with you in another couple of weeks. Love you from Edel and Jharna from Radio Halo. Bye-bye.